Hello, Jim.
Hey, brother, you coming in by video?
You want me to do video?
Yeah, can you share stuff too? Are you on a computer where you can share some screens and talk about them?
Uh,
I'm recording, but I'm not live yet, so I'm just gonna hit live. I
okay,
just
well, give
wondered
me
if
a
you.
couple of seconds
Okay.
and I will close down a whole bunch of stuff if you want me to show stuff.
Okay.
Then I will close everything
Yeah, it
else
might be
down.
easier for you to speak to. I don't know,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
yeah, I appreciate your time and your take. So I'm gonna start now live. I'm just going on Facebook because I got canceled from YouTube. I don't know if you heard, but I've been crying about it a little bit, and I'm gonna
Oh,
try.
yeah?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I'm bitter, but normally anyway. So I'm gonna try and actually go through OBS to Facebook with this, and then if not, the Zoom call is recording, and then I'll upload that to BitChute or whatever later. All right, so here we go.
All right.
Full screen. Oh, I don't want that full screen, do I?
Let me just, I gotta do this. Sorry.
All right, we should be live now, brother. How's things,
Well,
man?
Jim,
What's your
I'm just gonna,
background in this? Like, what's your like? You got a statistical background at all, or like what?
so I am involved in business transformation. It's an IT practice where you essentially take the old way of doing business and automate it. And I've been doing this for about 20 years. And a lot of the platform that I work with, which is predominantly Microsoft, is user interface, automating business processes, and all that sort of thing. But then there's this other part, which is reporting on what's going on in the business. I've been doing a lot of work in the medical side of things in the States. Of course, it's all private there, so it's employee benefits. And so this is all based on the technology that I've been using for the last 20 years. And uh, and really the ability to use that platform to gather the statistics. So what's really interesting about how I started off is I went directly to the WHO, the WHO's website, and I was pulling information right off of their PDFs. They're kind of packaged documents, and I was pulling that information right out of there.
You can extract information from a PDF.
Yeah, I was like
Oh, really? Okay.
scraping it out, and I didn't have to rekey it or anything. You could go in and actually
Wow.
sort of capture that data right out of the PDF.
Huh.
And that was, it was cool. It was a little bit awkward to work with. They kept changing their formats and so on. And then I became aware of the information that Johns Hopkins University has been putting out, and I started to consume that. And another thing that I started to do was pull data directly from the federal government page. And so there's all kinds of data sources. And really, what's really interesting about this, and I don't want to go too far off into a rabbit hole here, but this has really been a technology empowered disease. We've had a lot of technology come into play, just like the technology we're using right here. And it's been very interesting to watch the whole
What do you mean by
technology.
that? Say that again. A technology powered disease. How? What do you mean?
Well, we know more about this disease than any other disease in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about the scientists who are studying it, and the information they're sharing, they're uploading the genome of the RNA that is CoV2, the actual virus that causes COVID, the disease. The disease is COVID-19. The virus is CoV-2. And so those scientists are doing their work, and they're uploading that onto the internet and sharing it in real time, so that they know the genetic code of this virus instantly, and people can take that information and start doing their own work and their own analysis. It's just an incredible technology-driven discussion.
Yeah, well, thanks for inserting yourself into it. I'm not like I go to look at it. Some of it I have the power to focus on what I'm looking for. But if you go through enough slides, you can see enough trends even for yourself if you're looking for specific things. So what I heard today is what I consider myself probably 10 days into a voluntary distancing, and I just go for food basically. That's it. I walk, and it's like I'm not like, but probably the dirtiest places are the grocery stores or whatever. But today I heard that the single most susceptible group, and we have this mapped, we have more talking about information. We have a couple identified groups that are high risk. Guess what I don't know if you heard, guess what number one is though? And it's not age. It's obesity. Can you believe this? Yeah. I just heard it today. I'm like, oh, seriously. So fat is not beautiful anymore, because we've been telling you all along, it's hard you don't carry that much weight. It's not good for you. And I heard today, I don't know if that's what somebody else is trying to get in. I didn't give out a link.
No, I think it's me just trying to get in from my desktop as well, because I'm connected in through my phone.
Okay, yeah. That might change the setup though. Cool. Oh, all right, cool. So anyways, I was surprised to hear that, but yeah, I'm interested in any trends. Like, me, the first thing I wanted to know was, when are we going to peak? When are we going to reach apex infection rate? That's all I wanted to know since this thing started, right? And then the thing I heard was only maybe a week ago, they were saying middle of April. Now it looks like even some of the hot spots, we're seeing a turn in that. And Jeff, speak to the larger question, please. I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but the larger question is, yes, social distancing, yes, protect the vulnerable, but really shut down the whole world. I don't know. There's not a vaccine I'll take. I'll take my chances with the flu. It's not like I see myself as not highly at risk to dying from it if I have any symptoms at all. I just wonder, man, this is unprecedented. Somebody said on my comment the other day, I said, I was joking, half joking, bets that May 24, the States is up and running, and Christmas, we're still just doing stuff, and I said it tongue in cheek, obviously, but and someone commented about, no, this is, he said, oh, the American economy will collapse if they reach 100,000 dead. I'm like, dude, keeping business, the whole economy shut down is going to kill more people than the virus ever would. So,
well, and I think scientists know that. That's a really good point. Economists and scientists have all been discussing that point, and ultimately we can only keep the economy shut down for so long. And I think the government knows that too, and so they're coming to that realization. But I think there's a couple of really interesting cases that will help illustrate what happens if you just sort of throw caution to the wind. And I think Sweden is one of those cases. Sweden was amongst a group of slow-growing countries. The Scandinavian countries really formed a cluster that were growing extremely slowly. And they took on this, in Sweden, they took on this kind of reckless thought that, hey, why don't we just try and, let everyone get infected. We'll get some herd immunity, and we'll see what happens. We sort of believe that, we're Vikings, we're strong, we're healthy, and we'll survive. And they have probably the highest death rate in the world right now, per capita. So, there is definitely a reason why we're doing this. They don't have the most cases, but they also at the same time said, we're not going to keep testing people. So they've got an unknown size of disease. They've got a very high death rate. Their death rate is about the same as Canada. We're a much larger country, but it's also climbing, and it's climbing faster than ours is. And they've gotten to this point very quickly. So Sweden's one of those cases where, we can't just necessarily run out and resume the economy. So I was watching today, and Trudeau was saying, we're gonna make sure we follow the scientists. We're going to take very cautious steps,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to make sure that we don't put ourselves right back into the same situation where this disease grows faster than our healthcare system can handle it. And
Can I fire
and
some
I think,
questions at you, Jeff?
sure.
What's your knowledge of the, let's just take North American mortality rate? Because they
So,
started out 3-4%. Now all the data I seems to be way under 1%, half a
well, so
percent,
I've got,
3/4%. Like I was like,
yeah,
whoa! They started saying 3 and 4% when this thing broke loose, and now like that any data that I've looked at lately, it said 0.5 to
well,
0.75. So I'm interested in that number.
yeah. So I'm showing something on the screen here, Jim, and
Oh yeah, cool.
the global fatality rate right now is at 6.38%.
There's no
So
way that's right.
that's
There's no way
there's
that's right, man.
that's 125,000
I
deaths.
don't believe it. That's 6%.
It's most of Europe
No,
over 10%.
no way.
Yeah, yeah.
6% worldwide.
6% of
Oh my
the
God, that blows
cases
my mind.
of the COVID-19. So if you are tested positive for COVID-19, you globally you have a 6% chance of dying, and that's going up because the reason is that most of the cases have happened in the last month, right? And so as those cases age, they're going to raise the rate. And that's what we've seen. We've seen Europe, Italy's right now just under 13%. Spain is 10.5%. France is 11.5%. The UK is just under 13%. I mean,
I don't believe
most
it,
of
brother.
Europe
Wow,
is
unbelievable.
is
Now,
huge.
what about, have you seen, how does Canada, I don't know if you can compare the two. Tell me if it's fair to compare the two, but I thought that the states moved rather quickly to say, okay, hotspots we're not taking flights from right now. And Canada didn't seem to do that. And I thought that would come back to haunt them. Has it? Or like, can you compare the two populations because they're not as dense?
Yeah. I don't think that density so much has as much of a play. It's just how widespread it was in the US. I mean, they have probably, early on, they had probably 30 seating events, whereas Canada had maybe 4 or 5. And so I think that does have an effect as to how fast it grows.
Hmm.
Um, but Canada has much less cases than the U.S. Per capita, and I think I do have something here that I put together. This is my risk analysis, and it goes through and it actually shows you per capita how many people there are per case and how many people there are per fatality. And so in the U.S., there's one case for every 545 people. And there's one fatality for every 12,814 people. So that gives you a sense. But then when you look at Canada, we've got one case for every 882 people, so almost double. And we've got one fatality for every 9,760 and 77. So our fatalities are actually worse than the U.S. right now, and but that's climbing for the U.S. pretty substantially. But we're not doing that great on the fatality side. So we have to be careful about how much we think the U.S. is doing that much worse than us. In fact, the U.S. has been gaining a lot of news recently, but Europe is far worse than the U.S. is right now. In the case of Spain, there's one case in every 271 people, and fatalities are 1 in 2,500 people. So Europe is a complete disaster right now, and the U.S. is not good. In most cases, it's worse than Canada, but it's not as bad as Europe.
Interesting. I'm just checking. Not sure if this is coming through on the feed, but the Zoom call will be recorded fine. You can hear me all right, right?
I can.
So tell me about what you're like. What have you become present to with this whole, because this is unprecedented, right? And I think
Yeah.
I was saying to somebody on the phone the other day, or maybe on social media, I think we're naturally drawn to, I think we're softer on, we're able to see and give the benefit of the doubt to leadership in times of crisis, even if it's not really strong. We're like, oh yeah, he's doing a good job, as long as it's not really a bad job, right? I think we're prone to saying, yeah. I hear a lot of people saying, Doug Ford, way to go. I never thought I'd say this, but like, holy cow, he's really leading. Like, oh yeah, really? Same with Trudeau, like, way to go. Wow, strong leadership at this time. Trudeau, I mean, what? I don't know. I think he made a bunch of bad calls, and I don't see the leadership right down to his self-quarantine and the whole thing. But like, we've got unsecured borders and very little screening from many thousands of people that came in on flights from hotspots. And how that doesn't make our population blow up with it is beyond me. Maybe we have yet to see that play out, but can you speak in terms to as if have we hit the apex in Canada as a whole, or do you have to break it down as far as region goes? Or like I want to reach the apex. I want to know where that happens, and then.
Yeah, well, honestly, I think it's too early still to predict if we're at the apex. And what I have been able to do is sort of look at the numbers and analyze different countries. What's happened in most countries is they've fallen into certain groups. I have 3 groups: fast growers, middle growers, and slow growers. And Canada's in that middle group. We're in the middle group of middle growing companies or countries. Most of Europe and the US are in the fast growers. And then you've got some countries like Australia and the Scandinavian countries that are in that slow growing group. So there are a few things that I think, there's a number of different factors that I think are kind of interesting to see. Canada in the middle growing group has many statistics that are very similar to the others. And Iran continued to grow. Iran's another country that's in that group. Continued to grow and continued to accelerate for another 25 days. So there is maybe some indication that Iran might be hitting an apex, but there's really nothing about our group, the middle growing group, that says even though we're growing slower than the fast growing group, that we're getting close to an apex. Some of the countries that have hit apexes, like South Korea, looks like Australia has, tend to be on this. Any indications yet that we've hit the apex. And we are slowing, but we're not at a point yet where we can say the cases are starting to taper off.
Interesting. What other whose internet's unstable? Yeah, you're clipping there for a little bit, brother. Anyway, what else have you kind of gleaned from most of this data? Again, I was thinking more of a North American thing. I guess, the hotspots are gonna peak before sometimes the outlying areas go. Any idea on, because we could talk about the fear, and I have a shot here of CNN. You should see the stuff on the bottom of the CNN. Oh, it's just fear and fear. Anyway, reopening, like we've got some identified groups now, and going back to what we said earlier in the conversation, we have identified vulnerable groups, which is more data than we've had on most diseases immediately like this.
Right.
And whether it's obese or whether it's elderly or whether it's immune compromised, we know who to protect. So, moving forward, like, can we get back to work idea? We protect those people, put some resources in. We could have flown all those elderly, all those at-risk people to Hawaii for 2 months for the money we're spending shutting everything down.
Yeah.
And just keeping them on the island for 2 months and say, okay, we're going to go through this over here, and when it's all calmed down, you can come back.
Right. Yeah.
It's so yeah, we got to protect those people, but then you've got a lot of people that are going to be asymptomatic that are actually immune to it, and that's another thing. The antibody test is no time coming soon, I guess, and that's not a swab. I think it's the blood work, right, to realize if you're not going to get it at all.
I think the antibody test is pretty close. I think they've got some antibody tests. They just need to get funding, because what happens with the antibody test that's really different is they do it to a broad sample of society, and they basically see, okay, how many of these cases were asymptomatic, and we'll find that out by giving them this antibody test. The antibodies are developed as a result of having had the disease. And so if they test positive for antibodies, it means they had the disease. That gives us ultimately the big picture number that would help lower the actual death rate. So there's a pretty famous doctor out of Stanford who was talking about this, that we just don't know how many people actually have the disease, because we're only testing the people who have symptoms. It could be that a lot of people have had the disease and recovered, and we just don't know. That was a very controversial statement. He is a very highly regarded doctor, and this is his area of specialty. It just goes to show that even though we have all this data, we don't necessarily know everything, and some of that will come from testing of antibodies.
Do you have any data, especially, I think you could probably break it down by age, of like the percentage of people that don't show symptoms when they get it? I think that, like, it's probably as the older you get, the more, I don't know, are you more likely to, does that ratio close?
Yeah.
Does, as the age increases, like, we know that the very young almost don't get it at all, or don't show symptoms, or are asymptomatic, or whatever you call it. I'm not sure the correct medical term for it, but and then it seems to be, now I hear obesity today is the most at-risk group. That surprised me. We've heard the elderly and the immune compromised. Like, do you have any data on, what's the likelihood that, like, West Nile, there's a really good chance you get West Nile and never know it. Like,
Yeah, well, one thing I can tell you for sure is there has been a breakdown of the age groups, and it's pretty evenly dispersed across the age groups. I mean, there's a pretty marked gap with people under 19, but people in their 20s it's it's about a fifth of the cases. People in their 30s, it's about a fifth of the cases. People in their 40s, it's a little bit more than that. And then people in their 50s, they're the biggest group. But people in their 70s and 80s are not necessarily getting this more than those other groups. And so I think a lot of people who are, in our age group underplay the risk. There are a lot of people in our age group that are getting it. And when they get it, they get very, very ill. Some people survive and never live the same life again. Like they're permanently changed. Respiratory system.
Cinnamon rolls on the owl. Right. How about, sorry to interrupt. We've got it looks like some effective treatments, maybe even a vaccine. I'm not too much interested in that, but talk to me about the models and how they turned out. I mean, it looks like we overestimated, and I feel actually set political policy and shutdown policy based on those models. And now those models aren't, hey, we're not seeing what we thought we would see as far as a burden on the healthcare system, even in states where they thought they were in big trouble. Turns out maybe it's coming, I don't know, but they haven't seen that. So can you speak to what the models were, where they came from, and how could they, I mean, obviously there's room for error. It's a human process, I would think, even though the computer generated assisted models or what have you, but we set our policy on shutting everything down based on these models, and these models are way off. How much have they been off by?
Well, I don't necessarily think that the models have been that far off. I mean, one of the challenges with using math to predict something like this is you start off with very early data, and what you're predicting is, if we don't control it, this is what it's going to look like. And then what ends up happening is people say, okay, what can we do to flatten the curve? And China and South Korea just did an amazing job. I mean, they basically removed everyone's privacy. They collected all their cell phone data. They crunched numbers on it, and they identified everyone that anyone could have come in contact with, and they contacted them all and they tested them all. So that was a very effective way of tracking this down and getting on top of it. And South Korea's got 10,000 cases after starting off being one of the worst countries hit by this. China, we've seen the numbers. They're in the mid 80,000. That's a country that had every reason to go as bad as the U.S. did. And
I don't believe any of the numbers coming out of China. And I think the U.S. numbers are being inflated too, because everything's getting, this actually comes down to politics and numbers and budgets and stuff. And everyone's, I saw an article, I think it was in the New York Times of all places, not too long ago, and it was, where are the CVDs? Where are the heart attacks and strokes? They're not coming in. What, are they all dying at home? Like, where are they? These wards are empty right now. And interesting that I think some of the numbers are being padded. For instance, if you have a heart attack and you happen to have COVID, whether you're sick with it or not, it's going down as a COVID stat. So I wonder how accurate all this stuff is. But I trust the American stats more than I would trust the Chinese, if I was to pick.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I heard some data out of New York about 911 calls, and people are dying at home. Their calls for deaths at home are through the roof. Used to be like you'd get 20 a day, and now it's like 240 a day, and they're not being logged as COVID-19 cases. People are not, those dead bodies are not being tested. So I don't know. I think there's a certain amount of uncertainty about the data overall. But but to say that it's flat out wrong or false,
Mm.
I think is not the way to go either.
Well, forecasting anything that you've never lived through can't be easy, I guess. But yeah, do you think we got caught flat-footed? Obviously, I think we did, and you've seen actually the states seem to recover very quickly and not needed near as much as they thought they were going to. I mean, New York was asking for 40,000 ventilators or something. I don't even think they needed 10 or what have you. So it's but as far as the PPE goes, even the shipment that went back to China, and then like just our susceptibility to being, all the stuff comes from China. Most of the drugs come from China. It's like China. It's like,
Yeah.
Have you seen many holes? There are places that, might have benefited from this experience as far as preparation for the next one, because we know there's going to be another one. And yeah, maybe the next one's even scarier. Who knows? This one, I mean, I don't know how you rate it, but like, I'm not that afraid of this, even though I'm playing by the rules and being precautious. And hey, before this flu, I always opened my door with my sleeve, any door. So, I don't touch that. Like, I take precautions. I wash my hands a lot in flu season. People call me OCD. I'm like, no, I just don't want to get sick. It's a function of,
Yeah.
Germ Fannon, they used
Yeah.
to call me. So I've always been protective of it, because I just don't like the head colds. I don't like getting sick of anything, so I'm careful. But I'm not worried
Yeah.
that this is going to kill me. And I just pray to God that we find a decent, quick way out of this, because there's far more people going to die from the treatment, from the shutting down of the economy, the hopelessness and the lack of funds and the drug addiction. And dude, I don't
Right.
know, but you get locked up too much alone, and you're like, oh yeah, well, I can drink today, I can drink tomorrow, I can drink the next day too. Like, this is
Yeah.
really going to have an effect on suicides and mental health, and way more than the virus ever would. Just the economy being shut down. You know what I mean?
That's a fair commentary. I think a lot of people are concerned about that. And I'm concerned about that. But you brought up a couple of good points, and one really relates to a point that Bill Gates has been trying to drive home for about 5 years, and it comes down to how our country's preparing for this, and how are we prepared as a globe for infectious disease. Now, Bill Gates, I don't know if you followed his career after Microsoft, but he started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And one of the things they've been trying to do is eliminate infectious diseases. And they've worked on a number of them. So he's got a lot of expertise in this area. And he said recently that almost no country will get an A score out of how they've handled this. So there's going to be a lot of learnings. And I think one great thing about all this data we are collecting is that there will be a lot of information to help make better decisions going forward. But I don't think that we have in any way handled this well in Canada. I don't think they handled it well in the US. We could have prepared much more, much faster, going back to late January, early February. We really kind of waited, and even when the cases started to show up here, we waited until they were significant enough to shut the economy down. But then there's another point, and I think how do we see this curve down? And I'm really interested in the numbers from Australia. Australia, Southern Hemisphere, they're going through their summer. We're coming out of our winter in the Northern Hemisphere. We've got 4 times more cases, but we passed 1,000 on the same day, 1,000 cases. So Australia has about 6,000. We have about 25, 26,000, 27,000 cases. I'm wondering if it's the difference in weather. Is it the fact that they've got warmer weather, people are better outside and better air quality? than we are cooped up inside our house.
Mm.
We all know that the air quality inside our house is not as good as the air quality outside. So I'm wondering if all those things contribute to us being more susceptible. And then there's the whole UV factor and whether or not that neutralizes the virus.
Not to mention
No
the
hard data.
UVs we're supposed to get through our eyes, which is got a huge component of depression linked to it. You know, the alleviation of the depression anyways is UV through the eyes, I hear anyway. Sunshine makes me feel good, but yeah, it's I mean, everything's closed, right? You got to be careful where you go. I don't know. I mean, I walk my little thing, but come to think of it, what is that, a city park I just went through up there? Maybe it's closed. It's it's the lakefront trail. Like what? I'm gonna get somebody come up and saying, you know, this is closed. What do you? How inconsiderate? What? You know,
Yeah.
people walking, you know,
Yeah.
20 feet distance around me. And I'm like, okay, like I'll do it. I'll play the game with you, but I think it's ridiculous. Like, be careful, obviously, but 20 feet, okay, whatever.
Well, you know, I
But
mean,
don't speak moistly to me either. You can feel your moisture coming through the transmission. Loucks. I appreciate your time, Loucks. It's you know, I've seen so much of your. Oh, what's going on?
oh, Zoom is canceling our meeting.
They've
They've
oh,
got a
because
time
you got
limit.
a third person on there, dude. Yeah.
Oh, is that it? So if it's
Yeah, you
just
can
two
have
people,
two for you can have two for as long as you want. We've removed on your group meeting. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Thank you, Zoom. COVID. It's a gift from COVID. Love it. Okay, you got to click love it. Oh, okay. Yeah, just click that thing off.
let
Anyways,
me
yeah,
take
so
it
it's
up.
strange how worlds collide because we've come together. I mean, you're pretty political too, and we've come together on many things. And I was telling the story on another broadcast the other day. You tried to get me to make up with a certain local troll. He's off Twitter though now. I'm not going to mention his name. Anyway, what else is going on, bro? What else can you tell me about the stats and what we got to do moving forward? Like the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, do we protect the vulnerable and get the young and the healthy back to work? With you know, we're going to have new tests soon, hopefully in Canada. The state seems to be on top of it pretty quickly, even with the hydrochloroquine. They bought a whole bunch of it from India, I saw the other day. And what, do we even have PPEs if we need them? You know?
I think we're hearing that they do have enough in Canada. That I was listening to our premier today, and he said they just struck a deal to make a whole bunch of face shields and so on. So I think they're going to be fine on that front. I don't think the U.S. is out of the water, but I do notice that cases are on a rapid decline globally. So this week we had, you know, two of the highest days, and we have one of the lowest days as well. We're sort of seeing a decline over the last 3 or 4 days, from the highest to, you know, the lowest numbers I've seen since the end of March. So I think that's a good thing. I think the weather, I'm hoping the weather will have an effect. You know, Canada is still kind of in that, the numbers are going up and down on new cases per day, but it's not continuously trending upwards like it used to. And so, you know, I think we're probably in a relatively stable situation where we won't overwhelm our medical system, and hopefully that number will start to decline over time. We also had this past week the first sub 1,000 new cases per day. So hopefully we'll see more of those show up in a week, and that'll be a good sign. But I don't think we're out of this before the end of this month, and I think it'll probably be at least mid-May before they're going to make a call on how they're going to come out of this.
All right, brother. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it. I'm going to get back to what I'm not. I tweeted today. I'm like, I'm busy. Just kidding. Not busy. Actually, I did another interview today. But I appreciate your time, brother. And for people that want to find you, just give us a little idea where they can. I think it's in this, but this will be up on BitChute later. So if they want to email you or get a hold of you or see your Facebook page, what's the deal?
Yeah, you can email me at jeff@winrocks.ca. That's WINROX.ca. My Facebook is Jeff Loucks. Just look me up, and that's pretty much it. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jeffrey Loucks, Jeffrey.Loucks, as well. Yeah, so those are the three ways to get a hold of me.
I got a prediction for you. Spikes in suicides, pregnancies, and divorces.
Yeah,
that's COVID-19, and some people will belong to all or many of those.
Well, pregnancies, that's a good one to have. It's a good problem.
Anyways, appreciate your time, brother. Thank you for that.
All right.
And we'll touch you up soon, maybe with some new data.
All right. Take care.
Peace. Thanks, Loucks.
Thanks.
How do you turn this thing off? Anybody?
I was recording. Good. And I'm out of here, I think. Is this in the meeting?